I had just dropped my granddaughter at the airport when the man who had worked beside me for 23 years sent a message that made my hands go cold. "Don't drive home. Open the camera over your office." I was still sitting in the departure lane at BWI, watching cars stack up behind me. When I read it a second time, the message came from Calvin Reed. Calvin wasn't the kind of man who scared easy. We had pulled electrical cable through half-finished buildings during thunderstorms, worked emergency repairs in neighborhoods where transformers were popping like fireworks, and once spent 14 hours restoring power to a senior apartment complex during an ice storm. If Calvin told me not to go home, I listened. I'm Isaiah Brooks. I was 68 years old that spring, a retired union electrician, a widower, and the owner of a 6-unit apartment building in Prince George's County that my late wife and I had spent most of our adult lives paying off. I had never thought of myself as rich. I thought of myself as careful. There is a difference. My wife, Denise, and I had raised one daughter, Monique. We put her through college. We helped with the down payment on her first house. We babysat our granddaughter, Zora, so often that she had her own bedroom in our home. That morning, I had taken Zora to the airport for a flight back to Atlanta. She was starting her junior year at Spelman, and she'd spent the whole ride teasing me about the way I still printed boarding passes, even though everything was on phones now. She hugged me at the curb. "Love you, Granddad. Call me when you land." "I always do." "No, you always text." She laughed. Then she disappeared through the sliding doors. 10 minutes later, Calvin's message arrived. I pulled out of the departure lane and drove into the first parking garage I could find. Then I opened the security app on my phone. Camera 1 showed the front porch, empty. Camera 2 showed the driveway. My son-in-law's black Range Rover was parked near the side gate. That made no sense. Terrence had told me he was meeting clients in Baltimore that morning. Camera 3 showed the garage. Nothing. Then I opened camera 4. It pointed at the small office behind my detached workshop. For years, that room had been where I kept tax records, property documents, old contracts, insurance papers, and every important piece of paper Denise had insisted we never throw away. On my screen, I saw 3 people inside. My son-in-law was one of them. Terrence Coleman stood behind my desk wearing a gray sport coat and blue gloves. Beside him was a man I didn't recognize, carrying a hard black case. A woman stood near my filing cabinet with a tablet in one hand and a stack of documents in the other. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. I zoomed in. Terrence opened the bottom drawer of my desk. He knew where I kept the key. That hurt almost as much as what happened next. He pulled out the folder containing the deed to my apartment building. The woman began photographing pages. The stranger opened his black case and removed a portable scanner. I turned up the audio. The sound wasn't perfect, but I heard Terrence clearly. "Get the signature pages first." The woman said something I couldn't make out. Then Terrence answered. "Monday is the deadline. Once the petition is filed, we can't have him moving anything." The woman looked toward the door. "What about his daughter?" Terrence laughed. Monique signed what I put in front of her. My stomach turned. On the screen, the woman placed a document on my desk. The top page shifted just enough for the camera to catch the heading. Petition for Emergency Guardianship. Below it was my name, Isaiah Nathaniel Brooks. I stared until the letters blurred. Then the woman flipped to another page. At the bottom was a signature I recognized immediately. My daughter's. I don't remember how long I sat in that parking garage. I only remember the sound of a horn behind me and somebody shouting because I had stopped in a lane where I wasn't supposed to be. I drove to the top level and parked in the far corner. Then I called Calvin. He answered immediately. "Where are you?" "Boy, stay there for now." "Calvin, they're in my office." "I know. My daughter signed something." There was silence. "Isaiah, I don't know what Monique knows." "You saw the paper?" "I saw enough." I closed my eyes. "What in God's name are they doing?" "I think your son-in-law is trying to take control of your property." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because the idea sounded impossible. "Terrence can't take my property. Not while you're in control of it." Those words changed something inside me. Calvin told me he had noticed strangers around the workshop twice that week. Terrence had told him they were appraisers. Calvin hadn't believed him. That morning, Terrence called and told Calvin not to come by the property, because I had asked for privacy. I had asked for no such thing. So Calvin drove past anyway. He saw the Range Rover. Then he checked the camera system we had installed after somebody broke into the garage 3 years earlier. That's when he texted me. "Do not call Terrence," Calvin said. I wasn't planning to. "Don't call Monique yet either." That was harder. She was my daughter, my only child, the little girl who used to fall asleep on my chest during Sunday football games. The teenager who once cried for 2 hours because I refused to let her drive to Ocean City with friends during a hurricane warning. The woman who held my hand at Denise's funeral and whispered, "Daddy, you still got me." Now her signature was on a petition, asking a court to declare me incapable of handling my own affairs. I wanted an explanation. I also wanted to believe there was one. But I had been an electrician for 44 years. When you smell insulation burning behind a wall, you do not put your hand over the outlet and pretend everything is fine because the house looks pretty. You shut off the power. Then you find the damage. "Send me everything you recorded," I told Calvin. I already backed it up. That was Calvin, always 2 steps ahead. I drove to a hotel near Annapolis and paid cash for 2 nights. Then I called a woman named Yvette Gaines. Yvette had handled the closing when Denise and I bought our apartment building. Years later, she updated our estate documents. She was sharp, patient, and absolutely unimpressed by anybody's title or bank account. When I told her what I'd seen, she didn't interrupt. When I finished, she asked one question. "Have you signed anything recently?" "No." "Medical releases?" "No." "Financial authorizations?" "No." "Has anyone taken you to a doctor for memory concerns?" I sat up straighter. "No." "Has anyone suggested you should?" I thought about the previous 6 months. Monique had. 3 times. The first time was after I forgot a lunch date with her. The second was when I misplaced my house keys. The third was after a property tax payment was late by 8 days because I had changed banks and forgotten to update an automatic transfer. Normal mistakes, I had thought. Annoying. Embarrassing. But normal. Terrence had been present for 2 of those conversations. He always said the same thing. "We just want to make sure you're okay, Pop." I had never asked him to call me Pop. He started doing it after he married my daughter. Suddenly, the word sounded different in my memory. Yvette spoke again. "Isaiah, do not confront anyone. Email me the footage. Tomorrow morning, we're checking the court docket and the land records." That night, I barely slept. At 2 in the morning, I opened the video again. I watched my son-in-law put on gloves before touching my files. I watched the woman photograph my signature. I watched the man with the scanner copy pages from my deed. And I kept going back to my daughter's name, her signature. There are betrayals you can prepare yourself for. A business partner can cheat you. A stranger can steal from you. A spouse can fall out of love. But a child? A child lives in a place inside you where logic does not reach. By sunrise, I had convinced myself of the worst. My daughter wanted my property. The next morning, Yvette found the first piece. No guardianship petition had been filed yet, but someone had created a draft filing through an electronic legal document service. The draft claimed I had demonstrated progressive cognitive decline. It described missed appointments, confusion about finances, increasing paranoia. It said I had become suspicious of family members without cause. That last part almost made me smile. Without cause. The proposed guardian was my daughter. The proposed financial manager was Terrence. Then Yvette checked the land records. 2 weeks earlier, a title company had requested preliminary information on my apartment building. The request listed a proposed refinance amount of $1.6 million. I had never requested a refinance. Yvette leaned back in her chair. "Your building is almost paid off, correct?" "Completely paid off." She looked at me. "Then somebody thinks your equity can solve a very large problem." It didn't take long to find the problem. Terrence owned a real estate development company called Coleman Urban Partners. For years, he looked successful. New suits, new offices, groundbreaking photos, panels, awards, business magazines. What the magazines didn't show was that 2 of his latest developments were drowning. Construction costs had climbed. One investor had pulled out. A commercial lender had frozen additional funding. Yvette found public liens. Then a private investigator she trusted found lawsuits. Terrence needed money. A lot of it. My building was worth more than $2 million. Free and clear. Yvette tapped the draft guardianship petition. If you're declared unable to manage your affairs, your guardian can make financial decisions. My daughter. On paper. And Terrence controls my daughter. Yvette didn't answer. She didn't have to. By the third day, anger had replaced shock. But the anger wasn't clean. I was furious at Terrence. With Monique, it was different. I kept remembering every sign I might have missed. For months, she had asked questions about my bills, my insurance, whether I'd updated my will, whether I still wanted to manage the apartment building. She had even suggested I let Terrence take some of the pressure off. At the time, I thought she was worried. Now I wondered whether every conversation had been preparation. Then Calvin called. I got something you need to hear. He sent me audio from the office camera. The sound was clearer after he cleaned it up. The woman asked Terrence, "Does your wife know the petition says she witnessed episodes?" Terrence answered, "She knows her father needs help." That's not what I asked. Monique signed the family protection packet. That's enough. The woman lowered her voice. What if she reads the final version? Terrence laughed. She hasn't read anything I've handed her in 10 years. I listened twice. Then a third time. My first emotion was relief. My second was shame for feeling relieved. Because even if Monique didn't know everything, she had signed something. She had trusted her husband with my name, my life, my independence. That afternoon, my daughter called. I watched her name flash on my phone. I almost let it go to voicemail. Then I answered. Daddy? Her voice sounded strained. Hey, baby girl. Where are you? Why? Terrence said you haven't been home. I looked across Yvette's conference room. She was sitting quietly, listening. How would Terrence know? A pause. He stopped by. For what? To check on you. I let that sit between us. Then my daughter said, Daddy, I think we need to talk. About what? About you living alone? There it was. Not the truth. The script. I'm fine living alone. I know you think you are. My chest tightened. What does that mean? You've been forgetting things. Everybody forgets things. You missed lunch with me. One lunch. You forgot the taxes. They were 8 days late. And you've been suspicious lately. That one almost made me laugh. Instead, I asked, suspicious of who? She went quiet. Daddy, please don't make this hard. I closed my eyes. What did you sign, Monique? The silence changed. Not confusion. Fear. What are you talking about? What did your husband ask you to sign? I don't know. Some family papers. Read them? Terrence explained them. That's not what I asked. Another silence. Yvette slowly nodded at me. My daughter whispered, Where are you? Somewhere safe. Daddy, you're scaring me. No, baby girl. I think somebody else has been scaring you for a long time. I ended the call. She texted me 12 times that evening. I answered, none of them. The next morning, she sent one message that was different. I need to see you without Terrence. We met in the parking lot behind the church Denise and I had attended for 31 years. Monique arrived wearing sweatpants and no makeup. She looked younger that way, not 39, 19. She got into the passenger seat of my truck and immediately started crying. I didn't reach for her. That was one of the hardest things I have ever done. Daddy, I didn't know. Know what? Terrence told me you were getting confused. You believed him. I saw things. What things? She wiped her face. He showed me bills, late notices. He said you almost wired money to a scammer. I never wired money to anybody. She looked at me. He showed me the email. I felt something click into place. Did you see me send it? No. Did you ask me? No. Why not? Her answer came quietly. Because he said you'd get defensive. I looked through the windshield at the back wall of the church. Brick. Plain. Solid. My daughter continued. Terrence told me we needed paperwork in case something happened to you. He called it a family protection plan. He said it would only matter if you were hospitalized or couldn't make decisions. And you signed. Yes. Did you read it? Her face crumpled. Not all of it. How much? I don't know. That answer hurt more than I expected. She reached toward me. Daddy, I swear, I never agreed to take your building. I turned to her. But you agreed to let somebody make decisions about my life without talking to me. She started crying harder. I thought I was protecting you. No. My voice stayed calm. That made her cry even more. You were avoiding a difficult conversation. There's a difference. She looked down. I said, you didn't plan to steal from me. I believe that. She exhaled. But you signed your name while choosing not to know what it meant. Her eyes closed. And your husband counted on that. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, what do I do? That was the moment the story changed for me. Until then, I had been trying to save myself from my family. Now I realized my daughter had made serious mistakes, but she was also trapped inside a lie that had been built around both of us. I didn't need revenge. I needed the truth, and my daughter needed to decide what she was willing to lose for it. I told her everything. The cameras, the documents, the fake refinance request, the draft guardianship petition, the debt. She looked physically sick. When I told her Terrence had said she never read anything he gave her, she covered her mouth. Then she said something I will never forget. He's right. I didn't answer. That's why he picked me. No, I said. That's why he married a woman he believed he could control. She cried quietly. Then she reached into her purse and took out her phone. What do you need from me? Yvette handled the rest carefully. Monique forwarded every email and document Terrence had sent her. The so-called family protection packet contained 28 pages. The PDF she had received by email contained 17. Pages had been added after she signed. One of those pages included statements claiming she had personally witnessed me getting lost while driving. That had never happened. Another claimed I repeatedly failed to recognize people I had known for years. A lie. The signature page was hers. The statements above it were not. We also found something else. The notarization on a proposed power of attorney was fake. The notary whose name appeared on the document was real. The stamp number was real. But the woman had retired 2 years earlier and had never met me. The strangers on my camera were not licensed attorneys. One was a document preparation consultant who had previously done work for Terrence's company. The other was a locksmith. Terrence had paid him cash to open the filing cabinet after claiming the office belonged to him. Piece by piece, the story stopped being my word against his. It became evidence. Still, Yvette warned me, evidence only helps if you don't ruin it by getting impatient. So I waited. That was the slowest week of my life. Terrence called me twice. I didn't answer. He sent a message saying everyone was worried about me. I saved it. Then he sent another. Monique says you're confused and upset. We just want to help. I saved that one too. My daughter stayed at a hotel. She told Terrence she needed space because she was overwhelmed about me. He believed her. Of course he did. He thought he understood both of us. An old man who could be scared. A wife who could be managed. He was wrong twice. Calvin and I met one evening at a diner off Route 1. We sat in a booth near the back, drinking coffee that had probably been on the burner since lunch. I asked him the question that had been sitting inside me all week. How did I not see it? Calvin stirred his coffee. You were looking at him like family. I waited. He was looking at you like an opportunity. That was all he said. It was enough. A week later, Yvette arranged a meeting at a title attorney's office in Greenbelt. Terrence believed I was finally ready to discuss transferring day-to-day management of the apartment building. He arrived in a navy suit, calm, smiling. He even brought me coffee. Glad you're feeling better, Pop. I looked at the cup, then at him. No, thank you. Something flickered in his eyes. Monique arrived 5 minutes later. She sat beside him. He touched her knee under the table. She moved her leg away. Terrence noticed. Yvette entered with another attorney and a licensed notary. Terrence's smile tightened. Didn't realize this was such a formal meeting. Yvette sat across from him. Property transfers usually are. Terrence laughed. Transfer is a strong word. Is it? She slid a document onto the table. It was the proposed power of attorney. Terrence barely looked at it. This is standard family planning. I leaned back. I never signed that. Terrence gave me the soft voice people use with confused children. Isaiah, we talked about this. No, we didn't. He looked at Monique. Tell him. My daughter didn't move. Tell him what? She asked. Terrence's face changed. Just a little. But I saw it. Yvette said, "The notary listed on that document confirms she did not witness Mr. Brooks's signature." Terrence folded his hands. Then somebody made an administrative mistake. Yvette placed a photograph on the table. Camera 4. Terrence inside my office. Blue gloves. My deed in his hand. He stared at it. Then he smiled. I had permission to be there. From who? I asked. Monique. My daughter looked at him. I gave you permission to pick up the insurance folder. Terrence turned toward her. That's what I was doing. Yvette placed 3 more photographs down. The scanner, the guardianship draft, the locksmith opening my cabinet. Terrence stopped smiling. He looked at me. You've been spying on your own family. I almost felt sorry for him then. Not because he deserved it, because that was the only defense he had left. I said, you broke into my office. Your daughter gave me a key. You hired a locksmith. He looked at Monique. She was crying. Not loudly. Just tears running down her face. Baby, he said, this is getting twisted. She shook her head. Don't call me that. The room became very still. Terrence leaned toward her. You know why we did this. Her voice trembled. No, I know why you told me we were doing it. He glanced toward the door. Yvette noticed. So you know, she said, the refinance request has been withdrawn. Terrence's jaw tightened. And the title company has preserved every submission connected to it. His face went pale. And, she continued, the notary fraud has been referred to investigators. He stood. This meeting is over. I stayed seated. For you, maybe. He looked at me. For the first time since I had known him, there was no charm left. No polished son-in-law. No businessman. Just a frightened man who had built too much of his life on the belief that everybody else would stay where he put them. You think you won? He asked me. I shook my head. This was never about winning. He laughed once. What was it about? My name. I leaned forward. My wife and I worked 40 years for everything you tried to put your hands on. But the property wasn't the worst part. I looked at my daughter. You almost took my child from me by teaching her to doubt me before she ever asked me a question. Terrence turned toward Monique. You're really going to believe him? She stared at her husband. No. Terrence relaxed for half a second. Then she finished. I'm going to believe the evidence. He left without another word. 2 investigators were waiting downstairs. He wasn't dragged away in handcuffs. Life isn't always that neat. They stopped him, identified themselves, and served him with documents connected to the fraud investigation. 3 days later, a search warrant was executed at his office. The investigation uncovered more than what he'd tried to do to me. He had submitted false financial statements to lenders. He had used investor funds from one project to cover losses in another. My building wasn't his first desperate idea. It was simply the largest asset he thought he could reach through family. 9 months later, Terrence pleaded guilty to multiple fraud and forgery-related charges as part of a broader case involving his business. I didn't attend every hearing. I went to one. That was enough. My daughter filed for divorce, but I didn't tell her she could move back into my house. Not immediately. Some people thought that was harsh. Maybe it was. I loved my daughter. I still do. But love is not the same thing as pretending. She had not planned the fraud. She had not known about the forged documents. But she had ignored questions, because asking them would have made her marriage uncomfortable. That choice nearly cost me my independence. So, we rebuilt slowly, coffee once a week, then dinner, then Sunday service. Some weeks were good, some weren't. Once, she accused me of punishing her. I told her the truth. I'm not punishing you. I'm learning how to trust you again. She cried. So did I. But she came back the next Sunday. That mattered. Calvin became the official property manager for my apartment building. He argued with me about the salary, said it was too much. I told him to mind his business. He reminded me that managing the building was now his business. That was the first time I had laughed hard in months. When my granddaughter came home from Atlanta for Christmas, she noticed immediately that something had changed. She knew about the divorce. She knew there had been trouble, but we had kept the ugliest details away from her while the case was unfolding. After dinner, she found me on the back porch. "Granddad?" "Yeah, baby girl?" "Mom says she almost lost you." I looked through the window. My daughter was inside helping Calvin wrap leftovers. "Your mother made mistakes. She said you forgave her." I thought about that. "Forgiveness isn't one day." She sat beside me. "What is it then?" "It's waking up tomorrow and deciding you're willing to keep doing the work." She rested her head on my shoulder the same way her mother used to when she was little. I looked out at the apartment building across the alley. Denise and I had bought it when we were both working overtime and counting grocery money on Thursday nights. Back then, it had peeling paint, bad wiring, and tenants who didn't believe we would fix anything because too many landlords had promised before us. We fixed it, one room at a time, one wire at a time, one promise at a time. That's how a life gets built. I suppose that's how trust gets rebuilt too. Slowly, carefully. With somebody checking the work. I used to think the lesson from everything that happened was that you should never trust anybody completely. I don't believe that anymore. A life without trust is just another kind of prison. What I believe now is simpler. Love your family. Help them. Forgive them when you can. But don't surrender your judgment just because somebody shares your last name. And don't confuse silence with peace. Sometimes the person warning you is the one everybody else overlooks. Sometimes the person hurting you is the one smiling closest to you. And sometimes the child you think you've lost hasn't disappeared at all. They've just been standing inside somebody else's version of the truth. When that happens, don't destroy everything in anger. Turn on the light. Check the facts. Protect what you built. Then leave the door open only for the people willing to walk back through it honestly. By Vid. When trust is shaken, we do not have to choose between blind faith and a hardened heart. Isaiah's story reminds us to ask questions, protect what we have built, and give people the chance to rebuild trust through honest actions. Family love can survive painful mistakes when truth, patience, and accountability come first, and sometimes a relationship repaired slowly becomes stronger because both people finally learn to truly see each other. A small note for you. This story was created and fictionalized by AI to bring entertainment to the audience, while also sharing a positive and meaningful life lesson.